Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Danielle Sharman, and I'm a policy analyst with the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. I'm coordinating the Cultivating Local project alongside my colleague Joanne Fuller, who's the projects and training coordinator here at OFA. We have many partners working with us on this project, and we are thrilled to be launching it today. A few housekeeping items. Since this is a meeting style webinar, please ensure you're on mute. And if you could keep your cameras turned off, that will help some of our attendees with their rural internet. We'll ensure there are lots of opportunities for questions and engagement. The workshop will be recorded and will be available on OFA's Cultivating Local webpage. So I'd like to say a few warm words of welcome before we get started. Welcome to the first of 9 workshops in the Ontario Federation of Agriculture's Cultivating Local workshop series. OFA has been a longstanding supporter of our members who are eagerly diversifying into new products, new market channels, and finding innovative ways to get their agricultural products to Ontarians looking for fresh local food, flour, textiles, and so much more. Our 30 commodity organizations and agricultural organizations that are members of OFA are very grateful to have, we're very grateful to have their support on this project alongside many community and economic development organizations that have helped to bring this project to life. There are so many opportunities in the Ontario marketplace, whether you are a new farmer, the next generation of a farm family, an established farmer, or a creative food and beverage entrepreneur, or even if you work closely with agri-food clients to make their business dreams a reality, we are thrilled you are joining us to learn more. With so many avenues to get agriculture and food products to Ontarians, we hope this workshop series will enable you to consider which opportunity best fits your business and products and learn some tips and tricks from the many innovative farmers, food and beverage businesses that have taken the leap to sell direct to consumer. Ontario's agriculture, food and beverage sector is ripe for growth, already generating over $50 billion in GDP annually and employing 870,000 Ontarians. We produce over 200 commodities here in the province, and we know that number will continue to grow as we discover new varieties, new markets, and new opportunities to cultivate local. OFA is thrilled to kick off our workshop series alongside our partners, and we hope you learn a lot today. Please join us for the 8 more workshops to come. Thank you. Next, I'd like to welcome Krista Chapman. Krista is a consultant at Wilton Consulting Group. Wilton Consulting Group provides research and insights for the agri-food sector and rural communities. Her team at Wilton Group are leading the planning and delivery of the Cultivating Local workshops.
Thanks, Danielle. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to start things off just with a quick poll session here. I just want to learn a little bit more about where you're joining from today and maybe where you're at within your journey on selling to consumers. So a couple of questions should pop up here for you on your screen. You should be able to just select one of the options there. So we'll give everybody just a moment to respond to that poll. Great, thank you. I can see the results rolling in. We've got about 50% of people having participated so far. So I'll give you a couple more seconds. Great, okay, I can see most of you have participated, so I'm going to end that poll there, and I want to share a little bit more about who we have with us today. So we've got lots of folks on the line today. Looks like a lot of people from Southern Ontario. Great to see some representation from Northern and Eastern Ontario too, Central Ontario and Western. So awesome, great to have everyone here. And yeah, where are you at in your journey with selling direct to consumers? So it looks like we have lots of folks on the line looking to learn more today. A good number of people who've been selling directly for a while. Some folks who are just in their early days of selling direct, and some who are just beginning their research for selling direct. So this is great. Awesome, thank you. Excellent. So I want to share a little bit more about the Cultivating Local survey that we recently ran. So the survey was open from August 13th to September 16th of this fall, and it was open to all farmers. We heard from 640 people across Ontario, and 49% of the farmers that we spoke to sell directly to consumers, offer agritourism, or create value-added products. Who did we hear from? So we heard from a lot of farmers in southwestern Ontario. There you can see almost half, 20% of folks from eastern Ontario, 14% in central Ontario, 11 in the Golden Horseshoe or the Greater Toronto area, 7% from northern Ontario, and 3% other. A little more about who we heard from. So most farmers that responded to our survey have farms that have been in operation for more than 20 years. So 72% of folks, so lots of great experienced farmers participating. Most produce grains and oil seeds on their farm, forages or beef cattle. And the majority were 60 years of age and above, or 35 to 59. So respondents that already sell direct to consumer produce things like greenhouse, nursery, and floriculture crops, maple syrup products, and honey products. We did have a good representation of newer farms as well, where 9% of farms being established in the last 5 years had responded to the survey. Interestingly, 18% of people that we heard from Eastern Ontario indicated their farm has been in operation for 5 years or less. So some really great participation from new farmers in Eastern Ontario as well. We asked people what they were interested in learning more about, and a lot of people are curious about agritourism and value-added foods. So we had a lot of folks who were currently offering agriculture and food products directly to consumers. And yeah, as you can see there, lots of folks with interest in that agritourism and value-added piece. 29% plan to or would consider agritourism activities, and 27% planned to or would consider value-added foods as part of their farm operation. We asked people to share a little bit more about their gross annual direct-to-consumer sales for folks that were already selling directly to consumers. And we had a little over 40% who are in that $10,000 to $49,999 range. 33% that were less than 10,000, and then a couple that are in that 50,000 or above category. That doesn't necessarily mean that the whole farm's gross sales are in this range. This is just a portion of farm sales. We asked people about the top sales types and agritourism activities that they offer on their farm for folks that are already participating in selling direct to consumer. The top 3 on-farm sales types are custom order pickups at 53%, farm gate stands 40%, and on-farm retail stores. The top 3 off-farm sales types were farmers markets, wholesale markets, and retail or grocery. And the top 3 agritourism activities were farm tours, farm activities, and educational workshops. We asked people a little bit about the top benefits and the top challenges related to selling agricultural products directly to consumers broadly. Then we asked specifically about producing and selling value-added food, beverage, and other products, and then as well with offering agritourism. So starting off more broadly with the benefits of selling directly to consumers, what we heard from people were the increased income potential, so having that additional income stream on their farm, the ability to just connect with consumers and talk about agriculture and farm products, the educational opportunities as well, the flexibility, creativity, and personal satisfaction that comes with selling direct to consumers was noted quite a bit, and then creating a product to be proud of. So we heard a lot of comments around, I'm creating a brand for my farm, and it's something that I'm really proud of and proud to sell. So a good quote there. I love talking directly to customers and getting feedback about how the operation appears to them. In terms of some of the challenges in selling direct to consumers, the top themes included advertising and marketing. So we heard from a lot of farmers that It's not necessarily something they might be used to, and heading into that direct-to-consumer sales piece is that need to create a personal brand. Managing costs and profitability challenges, so how to price your product was a key challenge there, and how to manage that profitability piece. Time constraints and heavy workloads, public relationships and education. So education and public relationships was a benefit, but it also came through as a challenge in terms of educating people about agriculture and speaking to people who maybe don't know much about food and farming yet. And then finally, of course, the regulatory hurdles that came along with selling direct to consumers. And a lot of those comments would have come from folks who are doing some of the value added pieces, selling to farmers markets, et cetera. So these are all some of the challenges we hope to touch on in these workshops. And a good quote there, drawing people into the store or farm is a challenge. They may not know we're here, and we struggle with paying marketing professionals to help with that piece. So a bit of a knowledge gap there, and something we hope to help with through some of these workshops. In terms of producing value-added products, we heard a lot of people share that the top benefit for producing value-add is really being able to tap into the circular economy and reducing waste. So using the whole animal or food product and making less marketable fruits or vegetables for value-added products. So people were really proud to talk a little bit about how they're contributing to that circular economy through their value-added farm business. So reducing waste, creating circular alternatives that also generate a revenue stream. So that's a good quote there, and something we heard in a lot of the comments. So very similar sentiments around that. In terms of some of the unique challenges of producing value-added products, we heard a lot around the upfront cost being a hurdle to getting started. So going from farming to adding that value to the farm product, there were costs associated with that were noted as difficult. That difficulty scaling piece, so going from more small scale value add to something a little bigger in scale. Access to processing space and infrastructure, things like commercial kitchens, abattoirs, and packaging. And of course, this would depend on where folks were responding from as well, but definitely a theme that came through. And then the lack of funding opportunities. So people noted challenges in finding grants, especially for small scale farmers, and that being a key challenge there. So one of the comments here, difficulty setting up small food processing area that adheres to the regulations. So again, if you're not in that larger scale, it's challenging to go from small to medium there. And then specifically with regards to agritourism, we heard about a lot of benefits. So first, the opportunity to really develop a farm brand and experience for consumers. So that was something that people took a lot of pride in and saw as a key benefit to their farm business. We heard a lot of people talk about bolstering word of mouth advertising through agritourism. Having people on your farm really provides that opportunity for people to share more about your farm business, and then promotes direct line to customers to sell other products and collaborate with other farms as well. So we heard a lot about that co-opetition piece where farmers work with other farmers, and that being a huge benefit to agritourism as well. One of the comments here, it puts our community on the map for better economic development if we are known to offer agritourism. So a little piece there about that broader community development piece as well. And then, of course, the unique challenges of agritourism. So first, the insurance and liability piece came up quite a bit. So first off, the cost of insurance can be a barrier for folks. The risk of theft or damage to property, and the biosecurity concerns. So of course, when we invite people to the farm, that brings in a different level of liability and something to be aware of in starting your agritourism business. Buildings and facilities or infrastructure on the site to support agritourism, so making you have space and proper zoning for things like parking, washrooms, accessibility concerns, all of those pieces as well. And then the dependence on weather. So of course, agriculture is dependent on Mother Nature and weather, but it was also noted within agritourism that can be a specific challenge as well. People don't like to go out when it's rainy, so something that came up as a key challenge there. So a comment here, it's difficult to make the farm safe for visitors from visitors. So the biosecurity piece, possible theft or damage to property. So those are all some of the concerns that we think of with regards to those challenges there. So I want to pause for a moment because I want to hear from the audience if there are other challenges with agritourism, value-added agriculture, or selling direct to consumers more broadly. So those of you who have experience with this, I'm wondering maybe if you just want to use the chat box and copy or paste a couple of comments there, just in one or two words, maybe a couple of challenges that you've experienced in selling direct to consumers. The survey results that I just presented here, as well as your comments in the chat, will help us inform some of the future workshops as well. So moving ahead, we can help tackle some of these challenges or educate about opportunities to overcome some of these barriers. So if there are any challenges that you've experienced in your farmer food business in terms of selling direct to consumer, please feel free to post them in the chat there. And we'll keep our eye on that as those come in. We thank you for that. We'll use those to inform some of the upcoming workshops. Great. Thanks, everybody. So now that we've learned a little bit more about you all this morning, and you've had an opportunity to learn a little bit more about what we heard from our survey with farmers, I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker for this workshop and the Cultivating Local series. So I'd like to welcome Tara Pereira. Tara is the Executive Director of the Vermont Fresh Network. Tara works to advance relationships among farmers, chefs, and consumers to grow markets and eat more locally grown food. In her role, she develops industry-facing and public-facing programs to foster and support local partnerships. Tara has worked in marketing and communications for over 25 years, and we're very happy to welcome you this morning, Tara. So I will stop sharing, and I will hand it over to you.
Great, thank you. And thank you everyone for being here today. I look forward to sharing what I know with you. Let me share my screen here so that I can get into my, there we go. Is it working? I think so. Alrighty.
Yes, thank you, Tara.
Okay, good. Like technology. Okay, so yes, I'm Executive Director of Vermont Fresh Network, and I think we all agree all roads begin at the farm, right? We all believe deeply in uh, agriculture, the rural economy. Vermont Fresh Network, and you might have covered this, Krista, but our organization is dedicated to, we work within the state. So our definition of local is Vermont plus 30. So we just work specifically with partnerships within Vermont. And our organization's dedicated to flourishing local food system, for the benefit of our environment, our communities, our health, and the overall strength of the rural economy. And as I go along here, I'll be talking about, fostering partnerships, how we work together in collaborative marketing, and just removing barriers to success, whatever our definition of success is for farms. Okay, so yes, we 501c3 nonprofit, founded in 1996, and we're all about advancing local food partnerships and relationships with businesses and consumers, and we just want to build markets and get more folks to eat locally grown, Vermont grown and raised food. And this picture here, actually, and we'll discuss agritourism in a minute, but this is one of this is our annual event that we have actually it's at a farm, so it's an agritourism event at Shelburne Farms. And this picture, basically this event, and these are all our members, some of our members anyway, it invites 450 members of the public with about 200 industry folks to taste and sip their way through samples of our membership's food and drink for restaurant samples. So we'll partner farms and restaurants together to serve something. And then, of course, you were discussing value added was mentioned, specialty food and drink. And what we try to do with this event is educate the public about farms, local partnerships, and basically where their food's coming from. So that's it's really clearly people are having fun. It's a fun event. It's in the summertime, and it's located at Shelburne Farms on Lake Champlain. Vermont Fresh Network's memberships, as you can see, we have over 200 members. And initially in 1996, when the organization was started, we specifically focused on facilitating the farm to restaurant channel, basically setting up systems and kind of building that platform for that farm to restaurant market channel. Since then, our membership has really grown to include specialty food and beverage makers, winemakers, vineyards, cheesemakers, cideries, and even institutions, colleges, hospitals, food hubs. So those are kind of the industry side, but those we want basically those folks to work together, but also the third player in this group is the public. And we encourage consumers to purchase from local farms and who purchase from local farms to prioritize restaurants, other food and beverage businesses that have ongoing relationships with Vermont farmers. Excuse me. Basically, the idea is if I'm at a restaurant, I want that restaurant to list the number of farm partners they have. If you see that farmer at a farmer's market, buy from that farmer and then go to that restaurant, and you're helping that farmer also. Our public-facing work is part of our broader effort to bridge connections between Vermont farms and consumers by educating the public about food production on a Vermont scale. To that end, we develop resources and support the relationship between direct sales and agritourism. From farm stands to pick your own apples, to vineyard tastings, to concerts, to dinners, to outdoor rec adventures, agritourism is a meaningful and important contributor to Vermont's rural economy. So let's talk about agritourism in Vermont for a moment here. This is just a snapshot, basically. So the estimated total income from agritourism in Vermont is as of 2022 is $47.5 million. This number combines agritourism and recreational services with direct sales, on-farm sales, and farm stands. And you'll see that pie chart there, that 90-10 split. 90% of that is direct sales and 10% is agritourism. In 2017, that split was 97-3. So you can see the growth over the last, since 2017 of agritourism in relationship to direct sales. Right now, there are 323 farms who have reported providing agritourism services in Vermont. That's a 74% increase from 2017. And, when we talk about direct sales and that connection to agritourism, as you saw in the beginning with the that data, the Ontario data, it's farm stands. We look at direct sales as interconnected with agritourism, and agritourism is that educational aspect and building those connections with your customers and the public. So, if we talk about in Vermont anyway, if we talk about value of food sold directly to consumers, retail markets, institutions, and food hubs for local or regionally branded food. That number was 108 million in 2022, and that was an increase of over 39 million from 2017 and 2022. That a lot of that information, it was taken from the USDA census, agricultural census. And also, I do want to thank Lisa Chase of UVM Extension for providing me with this very nice slide. We worked closely with UVM Extension to support local farms in their agritourism journeys. So the number, that increase basically of from 2017 and to 2022, it couldn't happen without a combined effort. We're a pretty small state, and we have a lot of nonprofits, small nonprofits and stakeholders, whether regionally or statewide, that work in support of local agriculture. And we can see that we can see the value of working together. And at Vermont Fresh, because we have such a range of membership, and we're not just we don't have basically one sector. We're not just cheese, or we're not just focusing on fruit and vegetable farmers. It's that whole network. So we've learned the efficacy of taking a multifaceted approach to building partnerships and developing resources within a sector, while also marketing and promoting that sector to the general public. We know without that kind of top to bottom and integrated, everyone working together, it's not going to work. So speaking of working together, Vermont Fresh Network leads this partnership of, well, it's a total of 11 producer associations to populate businesses on diginvermont.com. It's a website devoted to authentic food and farm experiences. And as you can see, there are a lot of various sectors there, from the grape and wine folks to maple sugar makers, sheep and goat, the Farmers Market Association, and we all work collaboratively. Like I said, we're a small state, and so we all have it's important for all of us to, we're all friends. We know all the EDs, we work together, and we all believe in staying in communication and being generous with our time and our knowledge with each other. And as you can see at the bottom there, and if we're talking agritourism, Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, and Vermont Department of Tourism Marketing. Those two departments in our government need to be working together too. So we all collaborate, and it's important that we do this. There's a lot of crossover in our membership. I have cheesemakers, the cider makers have, we have cider maker members. There's a lot of different crossover there. The Vermont tree fruit growers have orchards, but those orchards may also belong to the Organic Farming Association. So it's important that we all work together in support of local food farms, and that's really the key. We want to foster each other's success. As I mentioned, Dig in Vermont, it's our consumer-facing site promoting food and farm experiences. And we use it as a collaborative marketing platform. It is public-facing. We have there's a monthly newsletter that has a solid subscriber list from folks out of state, in state. And we use this platform to develop programming and storytelling that supports the farms, the restaurants and breweries, cideries, and the many other producer businesses, the berry farms and hops yards, which help the public access local food across the state. We have an events calendar, a blog, including, as you can see, there at the top, there trails. And here, I figured I'd put a map together here for you. So this is the map of all of the places on Dig In. And so there are 557 places. All of these places are members of these associations. And, when people, whether they're traveling, visiting within the state or they're coming from out of state, we want them to explore Vermont food through its farms. We want them to experience that. And whether they come in, whether they're skiers, they're coming in for ski season, they still have to eat, right? They still have to eat and drink, and we want them to explore local food. Um, and and you know, by promoting agritourism and talking about farms, we want them to get out into places they wouldn't normally go. Um, if you live in the northern part of the state or you're visiting the northern part of the state, we want you to go driving to another area of the state and go for a wine tasting at a local vineyard, or explore a local town through its farmers market. Um, uh, I th there was talk of Maple before. We have Maple Open House Weekend, so every year. And if folks are exploring, visiting a sugar house during Maple Open House Weekend, we want folks to go to a local restaurant nearby that maybe purchase maple syrup from that farm or visit a cheesemaker on a tour. All of this is so the public um, can form a deeper connection with Vermont by exploring, um, by meeting its farmers, exploring the state, seeing the working landscape, and just learning about where their food comes from. Okay, here we go. So we were talking about, we can't talk about local food. We can't talk about food without talking about the season. And if we, that is another aspect of talking about food. So, you know, as you can see here, we connect our content and our editorial work with the season. Whether it's pick your own berry season, we want to highlight that during whether it's strawberries or raspberries or what. We have a whole calendar, of course, of when we should be talking about what. But we also like let's say let's say it's apple season, and you'll see here that we have for the last few years we've had an apple photo contest during apple season where we want the public to, while they're in the orchard, picking apples, take a picture and of your family and then post it, and folks can win prizes. But it's if you're in an orchard, those are pretty beautiful places, so it's easy to take a pic, and we want them to engage. And we've got, if you saw that little boy eating the apple in an earlier slide, that's one of the pictures that was entered one year. I love that picture. You know, as another example of seasons and content. And, every year Vermont Fresh Network partners with the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, and we publish a holiday food finder. So it's a list of local farms and markets where the public can find locally grown and raised ingredients for their holiday dinners. We're coming up on Thanksgiving, so that's what we're talking about right now. At the same time of offering that list, and we send it, there's a press release that goes out, and we hope we get earned media, and it's, if the local television station maybe will do a news story, and that's really great. Our, marketing is so important, and telling that story and education. So we work on it in a way to support our farmers, of course, but also to support that larger conversation about local food and reminding the public that they should consider where they're purchasing for their holiday dinner. As I mentioned, like at the same time, we're also publishing a list of and promoting a list of local wine and cider pairings for the holidays to connect. We want all of that to be connected. And it's definitely, honestly, it's fun. There's always something going on. And it's really about, we're talking about people growing things, people raising things, people producing value-added products. And it's it's that deeper, building those deeper community connections. So our public-facing events, basically, um, we're also involved in planning and executing public-facing events to further connect the public with local farms. As I mentioned at the beginning, we hold an annual fundraiser that brings together members of the public and farmers and restaurants to an evening that celebrates farmers and the folks who prepare our local food and drink. Um, Recently, we held a series of chef-led farmers market tours with our VFN chef members. And it was the idea. So our chef would take a small group of folks who signed up on a tour of their local market, stopping to speak with local farms that chef purchases from. And then the farmers would share a story about themselves and their farms and how they grow their food or their products. And it's really about increasing those touch points with how folks think about local food, interact with local food, whether it's at the farmer's market, at the farm stand, in a restaurant. And we try to bring that all together. And I look at it as a giant jigsaw puzzle, basically. So they'll learn about local food here and maybe something there, or they'll experience something here. And the more that happens, it builds up that greater picture. And you'll see right there's our big Open Farm Week chicken. I'll talk about that in a second. Vermont Open Farm Week, it's a week of on-farm events across the state. Basically, this past summer, we celebrated the 10th anniversary of Vermont Open Farm Week. Vermont Fresh Network and a small group of partner associations and stakeholders work together and partner on this project. And you can see that like this past year, we had 50 farms with 159 events across the state. And the events were varied and the farms are varied, from tours to dinners on the farms to concerts to workshops to garlic blade, learning about garlic braiding and experiencing that, to learning about no-till farming or a cheese tour. There's even often a 5K race through a farm. And you'll see that I love that little visitor cloud there. Of course, we get folks in state going to events, but we get folks from out of state, out of the area, out of the country coming to and experiencing Vermont farms. You know, University of Vermont Extension conducts a post-week survey, and you can see 85% reported of the farms who reported in the survey. 85% reported it's a helpful way in attracting new customers, and 70% reported it was helpful in increasing sales. We look at this week as a way for farms to dip their toe into agritourism. And, all farms are on their different business journey as related to agritourism or for whatever they're doing. And if a farm hasn't had a tour, this week is about meeting farmers where they are. They could have one tour on one day. They could do a picnic on another day. And some farms, as they've grown on their journey, they'll have multiple events. Clearly, with 50 farms and 159 events, some of those things are happening more than once. So some farms will have maybe a little yoga on the farm, or berry picking and cooking, or a concert. It's about meeting folks where they are, meeting farmers where they are, and removing barriers so they can participate in agritourism and explore that. And it's also removing barriers to the public to learn about local food. We want all the farms to be successful in what they do. And like I said, this has been going on for 10 years. I don't know of another state that does this. has this a week of open farm events, but it's a lot of fun. And as you can see, with that 54% number, it's a way for folks to explore. Um, and here's a picture of, yeah, we can see people, happy people, garlic braiding, a little farmer's market. Um, as I mentioned earlier, a multifaceted and multi-layered approach is important in building relationships and partnerships and um, and developing resources within a sector while also marketing and promoting that sector to the general public. To that end, we support farms and these businesses behind the scenes through networking events, to foster collaboration, getting people in the room just to talk and meeting, farmers sharing what they know, peer-to-peer learning, just building those deeper connections, inter-industry connections. So on one hand, to support that industry, we develop best practices resources, marketing toolkits, tools to navigate regulation, um, as well as collateral to help market themselves. You'll see that little Open Farm Week chicken up there. That actually is so to all the Open Farm Week farms, we send them a little packet of here's some postcards to promote yourself. Here's a blank poster to write your event in and put up around your town or areas. And then we also provide little dig-in booklets that these folks can have outside. So that's another way for the public to learn about what's going on in the state. Um, the one of the things about regulation tools, we work with UVM Extension to develop that industry support, those support resources, and you'll see there that the self-assessment checklist. It's a little booklet for farmers to kind of do a little self-assessment check about their farm and just kind of you know, how's our parking? How do I feel about it? And then regulation, we all know that depending on what you want to do on your farm, you'll need to kind of take different regulations into account. Do you want to do dinners on your farm? Do you want to just have a farm stand or pick your own? So we want to help support that, those farms learning about what they need to do and provide them with those tools. Okay, so, and then hold on, there we go. And you can see we have some pictures here of our farmers, a farm stand, cheesemaker winning an award. That upper image there, that the sheep, that's an Open Farm Week event where a farmer basically does show, has sheepdog demonstrations and that sort of thing. And really, it's about, supporting our farms and it's as with any business, a business owner, there's certain things that they enjoy doing. They maybe not that they don't enjoy doing it, maybe they're not experienced enough, and whether it's marketing or whatever it is, we want to help support their growth. When I speak with farms who, let's say, they aren't experienced in marketing or they don't know how to start there, I tell them, you know what? You're the expert of your farm. You know the prettiest spots on your farm. Start taking pictures. Do you have and get it up on social? Do you have a favorite chicken? You take a picture. It's about sharing your knowledge and your passion. I know a dairy farmer who, if I ask, oh, how are the cows? He'll take the pictures out on his phone because he has favorite cows and he'll take pictures of them and he'll talk about them. And there's nothing better than hearing and connecting and speaking with someone who is passionate and knowledgeable about what they do. And I think that, really it's about supporting the farms in their journey, but thinking about, um, how do we build these partnerships? How do we work together in marketing? If there is I was mentioning on-farm events before, if let's say a farm is having an event and maybe there's a neighbor farm who kind of wants to be part of that, I tell those farms, you know what? Partner with the more experienced farm, learn and work together with them. And really, removing barriers. A lot of what I do is removing barriers. A farm doesn't have the information about something that they want to do. Here is a best practices toolkit. Um, Farmers or folks, businesses don't have time to get together, or they don't, making the time. We have networking events for them to meet. Um, Part of what I do as an association is our job is to make sure our membership has the information they need. Is there a local grant? Is that something like that? But it's really about, working together with folks regionally, statewide, and really that's what we try to do. I want, I want my members to be successful. I want my partner organizations to be successful. And it's really that idea of that rising tide raises all boats. And that's how we work basically. And so I recommend if you want to think about that and be successful, kind of consider that multi-layered approach. Um, and reach out to others and learn from them. But like I said, all roads begin at the farm. And so going in with that and that's how you'll be successful. And anyway, that's it. Thank you. How was my timing? I might be a
That
little early.
was That was great. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Tara, and really great advice with regards to, you know your farm best. You know the most beautiful spots on your farm, so start taking pictures.
Yeah.
So I have one quick question in the chat here, and then for folks on the line, I think Tara will be staying online, so you could feel free to post some more questions in the chat, or I'm sure she'd be happy
Yeah.
to connect with you at a later time. One question in the chat here, amazing and inspiring work. So congratulations and thank you. And curious where you receive your funding from.
Oh, good question. So we have multiple funding channels. So on one hand, member dues. We're an association, member dues. On the other hand, we have grants. So I was talking about agritourism in 2019, we actually applied for a USDA grant to strengthen agritourism in the state. So over a solid 4 years, every year we had different projects we were working on and speaking to our farms and seeing what they needed and how to support them. So grants, also events, sponsorships, things like that,
Great.
donations. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. This
Mhm.
was great. Thank you so much, Tara, and appreciate your advice for Ontario farmers as well. And if you're able to stick around and answer any questions that come up in the chat, that would be wonderful. So thank you so
Great.
much.
No, thank you. Thank you. I look forward to hearing the panel.
Thank you. Great. Very interesting. So next, I'd like to introduce Carolyn Peterborough. Carolyn works as a business and economic advisor with the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness. Carolyn's work supports the process of communities identifying and initiating their own solutions to building healthy, economically viable rural communities. Carolyn has worked in economic development for 20 years at both a local and provincial level and in her community as an active volunteer. Carolyn is a University of Guelph grad with a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture. Today, Carolyn is joining us to share some consumer insights on behalf of Foodland Ontario. So welcome, Carolyn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Krista, for the invitation. And thank you, Tara. That was fascinating to see what's happening in Vermont and to see some of the neat programs you have that are likely very applicable to Ontario as well. And so, as Krista said, I'm going to be speaking on behalf of Foodland Ontario today. So, Foodland Ontario has 45 years of history. And they use a variety of approaches in order to build the Foodland Ontario brand and encourage consumers to really understand, anticipate, and identify Ontario foods first. So I'm speaking today. I know one of my colleagues, Jeff O'Donnell, is on the line. Jeff is the team lead with our domestic marketing unit. So Jeff is available, and if we have questions, I'll likely pull him in if there's anything that people want to know a little bit more in detail. So before I go into the consumer insights, I do want to talk about the Foodland Ontario, the brand and the logo. So this is a brand that exists to make it easier for Ontarians to recognize, when they're buying Ontario products. And it's really widely recognized. It's almost recognized by 85% of Ontario consumers. So producers or processors, they can apply to use the Foodland Ontario brand awareness. So use the logo on their markets, and it helps them let the consumers know that those products are from Ontario. Foodland Ontario has partners across the province. I think there's around 1,700 and likely growing all the time, partners who have permission to use the logo on their materials. And there's no charge to use that logo. Users can apply to use it. You can see the link on the screen there, the foodlandontario.ca link. So you can apply to use that. You submit your application online. You read through the how to use the Foodland Ontario logo section. And if you meet the criteria, you get a logo agreement that to be complete. Once that's signed, you're able to use that. And then that also gives access to producers or processors access to point of sale materials at no cost. So those could be banners or base wraps, or you may see the signs at farmers markets where folks can, use the Foodland Ontario to write their pricing on and that sort of thing. And you'll see lots of other sort of sales support, such as recipes that use Ontario products and that sort of thing. There's also the Foodland Ontario organic brand as well that exists, and food processors are eligible provided they meet the criteria. And just to give a little bit of information on the metrics sort of tied with the brand, and you can see on the screen there's a number of great metrics there, including, which one of the ones I find fascinating on this one is, shoppers find it easiest to find Ontario eggs at 74%, Ontario fruits and vegetables in stores, 73%, followed by Ontario dairy products, meat, 65%, maple syrup, honey, baked goods, and then processed foods. So that's what I find. And most, the preference to buy Ontario. So most Ontarians, so 45%, are reporting ways they always try to buy local food over imported food. And you can see also that support for the Foodland Ontario logo, 81% up in that top right-hand corner. So lots of good data to support this logo as a way for people to, understand how to find and where to find Ontario products when they're interested in buying them. So shifting into those consumer insights that we talked about, Foodland Ontario conducts consumer research so they can get a better understanding and insights of, why do people make the purchasing decisions they do. And it's really helpful from a Foodland Ontario perspective to facilitate, how the program works, what the marketing planning is in order to achieve results. And it allows us to better understand how Ontario consumers select food and what motivates those purchasing decisions. So through 2021, there's a usage and attitude study was conducted. And some of the things that were learned in that study is in 2021, more Ontarians reported they always try to buy local over imported food, which is similar to what I said on the previous slide, but that's higher than we also have found that consumers have renewed their focus on local community, and 82% reported that shopping locally is one of the best ways to support Ontario's economic recovery we move past the pandemic. Another interesting fact is through the research is Ontarians are becoming increasingly conscious of the source of the products they purchase, and there is a strong sentiment among consumers to shop locally and support farmers and businesses in their communities. There's also, in general, consumers have an increased price sensitivity and are concerned about rising food costs, which I think most people are, there's lots of concern around that right now. And it also allows Foodland Ontario to understand who to target in their consumer campaigns through this research. And so looking at throughout the years, consumers that tend to buy local are more likely to buy these if they see that Foodland Ontario logo. So they've got that validation that it is Ontario product. And a strong majority of consumers continue to feel the Foodland Ontario logo influences their purchase of local food and find it easy to find fresh local Ontario products where they shop. So some great information to help sort of set the framework of looking at local food and cultivating the local market within Ontario. So part of the usage and attitude study that I spoke of earlier, there was a segmentation analysis that was conducted and identified 6 consumer groups. So you can see those consumer groups on the screen, and you can see it sort of goes from that propensity to buy local. So on the left, the local enthusiast, over to your right side, your budget conscience. So this is the subset of all your grocery shoppers in the province, and of course I'm moving my my mouse. So I'm not sure whether you can see that or not on it. But between in the green, the 15% and 28% of the value driven and the convenience driven, you can see that those are consumers that we're looking like there's the greatest opportunity to increase the purchase of Ontario grown and produced food by targeting these 2 types of shoppers. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the consumer insights found, and you'll find when we go through that, you'll see there's a lot of data on these pages, but we'll try to pull out some of the highlights that Foodland Ontario found. So through the research, Foodland assessed that when purchasing foods, the freshness of the product continues to be the most important consideration. So you can see freshness is right at the top across all those segments of consumers. Price, nutritional content, safe hygienic production are also among the most prominent. Appearance comes up next. The concern about the presence of pesticides or food additives, and then locally grown food. So this last one, you can see that you're at that 70% of total had that an important factor in purchasing fresh food. So that's important to know. So sort of where that falls in the price with your list of those attributes that are important when purchasing local foods. So now when we start looking at Ontario versus imported, when asked Ontarians how they would rate Ontario grown and produced food compared to average food imported from other places on each of these factors, impressions of Ontario food compared to imported foods are strongest for the freshness, quality, healthiness, and the length of time to market are key considerations. So consumers are looking, how fresh is the product? What is the quality of the product? How healthy is it for my family? And how long does it take to get to market? Those are those key considerations as well. And since 2019, impressions of affordability of Ontario grown or produced food and the presence of pesticides or food additives have improved, while fewer Ontario food are looking for above average for the quality and safe hygienic production. So they rate Ontario above average for that quality side of things. And it also value varies from one to then another depending on the target segment. As you can appreciate, value driven or budget conscious have the lowest percentages depending on the consideration. And again, those segments are along the top that I showed you of the most propensity to buy local food over to the least propensity to buy local food and those impacts of that. So when we look at our the propensity to purchase Ontario grown foods in the future, The majority of the respondents, so you've got 86% in that first column there, say they are more likely to buy Ontario food if they knew it was benefiting local farmers. So that tie back to the story, and it reinforces some of the things that Tara talked about in Vermont, is, knowing the farmer, visiting the farmer, understanding, and those sorts of things, telling the story. So if they know it's benefiting local farmers, they have a higher propensity of buying that product. And just as we get close to the end here, when we look at local loyalty for local ranked high in 2021 with a total of 47%, indicating that if given a choice, they will always try to buy locally grown and produced food over imported food. And that's followed closely with that second in that first column, those that prefer to buy locally grown and produced food, but only if it's the same price or cheaper than imported. Some of the feedback that was conducted or collected during the research, some of the insights that you can see on this slide. So why buying local is important. So again, as I said earlier, it supports local farmers, it supports the local economy, it's fresher. Reasons for that, for a lack of purchase intent, price cost, that wanting to buy was cheaper, so that price sensitivity, that availability in the grocery store, and impact on purchase intent. So if it was the cheapest option, or indicated they would purchase it, if it were fresher, and if I knew I was benefiting a local farmer, can all impact that intent to purchase. Some additional research shows that attitude toward local fresh food, the belief, that if it's locally grown, it's fresher, the respect for local farmers, benefiting the economy. So you're hearing some of the same trends repeated as you ask different questions throughout the research. And then some of the eating habits, which I find really interesting, the eating together as a family, it's time we got back to more wholesome eating, so that attributing local towards wholesome, and so preparing meals ahead of time, so to save time within the evening. And I'll spend a little bit of time talking about where people find in the consumer research, approximately how many times in a typical month do you shop for groceries at each of the following food retailers? So you can see the large chain grocery stores are at the top of the list, followed by discount grocery stores and warehouse club stores. And then as you go further down the list, sort of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 down the list, you start seeing the farmers markets are directly from the farmer producer, which helps to support what Krista had said earlier when they did the research amongst OFA respondents. They're saying, getting the word out was one of the big challenges that folks were experiencing. When you ask what was the preferred grocery store, you can see at the top, you've got the No Frills, followed by Walmart, and then Food Basics. And when you think of that, like a No Frills or those sorts of things, has likely more banners or more storefronts than some of the other stores. For this particular question, respondents were asked to select only one, so they couldn't select various. So that's where you get your ranking of your grocery stores. And then another important consideration that goes back to some of those insights I spoke to earlier, when asked of the percentage of cooking your own meals at home versus eating out, the average consumer reported the majority of meals are cooked at home. So that's 86% were cooked at home, where only 14% were eaten out. And then where people get information on their food and nutrition information. The majority, you could see 56% is the primary grocery shoppers get their information about food and nutrition online through websites, followed by 4 and 10, so 40% who rely on friends and family, and 25% on television, which I don't think that surprises anyone that online is coming out as the highest. Younger consumers are more likely to say they get the information from online websites or online communities, where are more likely to say other things such as things like the newspapers or print publications. And so this was a really quick overview of some of the information found through Foodland Ontario's consumer research. And I hope it gives you some good information when you're thinking about how you reach out and where you reach out and where people are looking for food. And I want to share Foodland Ontario's. I'll just share. Thank you, and I'll share Gigi's information. She's a client service officer with Foodland Ontario, and is always happy to help you. And in addition, the website that I shared earlier has the Foodland Ontario link there. So I think that's everything I was supposed to cover in this one, Krista. So I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Don't go too far. Thanks for sharing those consumer insights and really that importance around selling local agri-food products in Ontario too, for the local economy. So next, I want to welcome our panelists to join us. So we have Amy Bowen from Vineland Research and Innovation Center, Erica Pate with OMAFA, and Nicole Marinick from Marin Marcoux Marketing to join us. And I'd also like to invite you back, Carolyn. So we mentioned Carolyn is a very active volunteer in her community, and she has also volunteered to help moderate this session today. So thanks to our panelists for joining us. And I think we'll just make sure you're spotlighted here so everyone can see you. And I will turn things over to you, Carolyn.
Okay, thank you very much, Krista. And so we're going to start just with some introductions and an opportunity for each of our panelists to introduce themselves and share a little bit about themselves. So, and this is on market trends and in-demand local products in Ontario is the theme of our panel. So I will start with you, Amy, if you're okay to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work at Vineland Research Center as well.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me today. My name's Amy Bowen, and I'm the director of the Consumer Sensory and Market Insights program at the Vineland Research and Innovation Center. So we're a private, not-for-profit horticultural research center that's located in Niagara, Ontario, and I've worked here for about 15 years, and kind of one of the key goals that we've always sort of had is understanding who the consumer is and what the consumer needs and how to connect people along that value chain. And so when I think of the consumer, yes, it's definitely that person that's, buying things at the farm stand or at the grocery store, but it's also the people all the way along the way that make it possible that those products make it to market. So we need to understand, like, what is it that the farmer's looking for? What is it that the different growers are looking for to be able to plant those products, to be able to, produce those products that they move forward that way. So do a lot of work around, adoption of varieties, processes, technologies, understanding kind of, grower, consumer sort of industry needs, what are sort of priorities, how do we provide support for them, and doing a lot of, sort of research around kind of really understanding how to bring and connect that value chain together. So I'll be talking more about my experiences and stuff over the panel, so I'll leave my introduction there and let the next person go.
Oh, that's fantastic. That was great how you tied it back to the consumer insights. Erica, I'm going to pick on you next. Erica, can you share a little snapshot of how your experience working with berry farmers and how you support farmers when they're looking at going to market direct to consumer?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me on the panel. So maybe as you can see from my background, I work as a fruit crop specialist with OMAFA. So I work with strawberry, raspberry, and blueberry growers for the most part. And my role focuses on production, pest management, and marketing. And most, like maybe 90% of berry growers in Ontario do some kind of direct marketing, whether that's on-farm markets, farmers markets, or pick your own. So I work a lot with growers involved in direct marketing. And some of the work I do involves knowledge transfer on different marketing channels and tools, such as pick your own, or working on different production systems and varieties to meet different markets and different demands.
Wonderful. And Erica, in her bio, it said this, but when she started with OMAFA, she was our direct farm market specialist for a number of years, and she did a number of presentations for me at that time, and it was fantastic. So thank you. Welcome, Erica. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what you're bringing to the panel. And that's awesome. 90% of berry farmers direct market. It makes sense when you say it, but I didn't I didn't realize it was quite that high. And Nicole, can you tell us a little bit about your company and how you work with farmers to tell their story?
For sure. Thanks for having me. So I'm Nicole Marinick. I'm the owner of Morin Marcoux Marketing. We're an agency that specializes in agribusiness. So really, we do whatever the client needs. Some people it's just research, other people it's just content development. But for the most part, we act as people's marketing department, and we help develop brand identities, help understand where you fit in terms of positioning yourself to a viable consumer segment. And we really specialize on digital marketing. So social media management, advertising, you name it, really. We collaborate with a lot of different groups. I think the person from Virginia said that. For a lot of businesses, we're all trying to do a lot of people in local food, that sort of environment. We're often working towards the same goal. So it's really good when you can create partnerships and collaborations to share resources and make things happen.
Yeah, for sure. And when Tara was talking about that, I thought about that of, when you have a group of those types of businesses together, you may think it's competition, but it's actually helping each of them because people want to be out for a day and go to a group and not just one. So that working with other businesses makes a lot of sense in this particular area.
Also, there's so many different industry associations that are working actively on a lot of farms' behalfs, right? So there's like OFA, but in terms of agritourism, I know Kevin at Farm Fresh Ontario, he's been really active as well. So yeah, there's a lot of great industry associations that are often there to support groups in businesses too.
And often at a local level too, to complement sort of the provincial level organizations. Okay, so let's talk about dive into our panel questions. So we want to start with talking about, I did a little bit about a consumer insights and understanding, but from all of you have on the ground experience, and what are one or two trends in direct to consumer sales that are exciting you right now, and why is that? Maybe we can start with you, Amy, with
Sure. I think the biggest one that I'm sort of seeing is, and it was mentioned by, Tara in terms of what they're doing in Vermont as well, is the diversification. So it's kind of moving beyond just that sort of farm stand sales, and people are doing all sorts of different things and kind of trying new things and sort of what works for their business. So it's not like a one size fits all. So I think kind of that goes to sort of the innovation thinking outside the box of how we connect to consumers based on the products that we offer and based on what we want to be able to offer to those consumers. And, one trend that I see, around that is really kind of the self-serve option, realizing that farms are busy places. There's a lot more going on than just, selling to the consumer. And so doing things like having vending machines or having, specific times or windows or, pickup of boxes, sort of those types of things, so that you don't have to have as much kind of staff, managing that. So there's tons more, but I'm sure they'll come up during the session today.
Yeah, for sure. Really, really neat. Nicole, do you want to share?
Yeah, definitely. I think the falling down of barriers to market direct to consumers through new and always evolving technology. I think that's a big one for me. In our agency, we're always looking to see how things are changing, and they're changing incredibly rapidly. So there's, with like ChatGPT, tons of different platforms to help manage social media, do research yourself online. There are so many ways that you can learn and connect with consumers directly in a very cost-effective way that really didn't exist, even 5 years ago. Things are really moving very, very quickly. So I think that there's a great opportunity for people to do a really professional job, sort of from the farm level.
Yeah, it's fascinating what is happening right now and how quickly things are happening and what the opportunities.
Yeah. So again, like what Amy was saying, like you can manage the flow of traffic on your farm much more easily through like booking online or whatever, but also just how you communicate with people. So like there are so many options now, and so many of them are free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And Erica.
So from my perspective with berry farmers, a lot of the conversation lately has been about the trend of customers coming more for an experience versus potentially just that volume. So I think specifically for pick your own, traditionally pick your own, like maybe 15 or 20 years ago was targeted towards, a customer who would come out on their own to pick large volumes of berries or apples or whatever the product is at a potentially a lower price than what they could get at the store or at the grocery store. And now we're seeing that growers are more coming out for the experience of, customers are coming out for the experience of being on the farm, being out in the country, getting some fresh air, and having a day with their family or a group of friends. So there's a bit of a shift from a single customer to larger groups, and a shift from large volumes of produce to just maybe smaller volumes, but looking for a bit more of an experience. So I think there's opportunities there to provide that experience for those customers. Whether that's adding a picnic table for them to stay on the farm a little bit longer, or adding a play yard for kids after they're done, or like farm animals for them to meet. So I think that's kind of the agritourism I think they mentioned in that insights that Krista was talking about, where there's a growing interest in agritourism. So I think that's kind of the trend that farmers are seeing, is that customers are interested in the experience, maybe more so than 15 or 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation, and something I definitely see in the direct farm marketing businesses around me. And so when we've talked about trends, from those trends, are there any emerging opportunities that you have seen, whether in local food or agricultural products that are interesting you and exciting you right now? Is there anyone who wants to dive in first?
I'm happy to. Or
Okay, go ahead, Nicole.
Excuse me. I think for me, there's sort of a greater awareness of different markets in Ontario in particular. So, in the last couple of years, we've had a really big influx of population from South Asian markets. And a lot of the time, they won't necessarily be aware of what's in season in Ontario when. Some of the products they may not even be really that familiar with at all. So like asparagus, for example, we've been doing some work with them. And a lot of people from Southeast countries have never had asparagus. They didn't grow up eating it. They're not really familiar with what it is. So there's definitely, I think, an opportunity to kind of really educate people that are new to Ontario about what's in season when. And to be honest, even amongst people who have grown up in Ontario, I think there's such a distance from what's actually grown. A lot of people just don't really understand. So like there's definitely research that says people want to support local. They actively look for local. I'm a little bit more cynical. I think a lot of people look for what looks good, what they think their whole family will eat, what's convenient and fast to cook. And definitely there's a whole piece about the experience. That's a completely different thing, but like day-to-day shopping, a lot of people in Ontario really don't still know what's in season and how things are grown. So there's still a lot of work to do there. And I think it's an opportunity because we can excite people with what is fresh, what is local. But a lot of the time we have to tell them when that is. If you look at sort of the experience part of it, definitely there's, the growth of discount banners in terms of grocery sales have that research that Foodland presented was from 2021. Research I've done just this year, people are still really driven to go to discount banners. So like, Frills, Walmart, the cheaper stores because of inflation and different reasons why they're trying to save money on groceries. So definitely in terms of like positioning yourself as a farm or from farm, the whole experience, the relationship with the farmer, all of those things can help you command a greater price. And a lot of the time people are not going to the farm to get a value. And in my experience, it's usually a lot more expensive actually to go to the farm. To do apple picking is expensive for my family. If I want cheap apples, I'll go get them at the grocery store, to be honest. Definitely you go for that experience. So yeah, understanding your market is really, really key. Who's your core audience? What do they value? Anyway, next.
Yeah, so much good information there. I've got more, but we'll let everybody else know. Go ahead, Erica.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I agree with Nicole about the educating customers on local food. And especially when you mentioned even people who have grown up in Ontario and they're familiar with what they think is grown on, what the seasons are for different produce. Like for berries, there's season extension now. So we can get strawberries beyond the standard June bearing season, whether that's from different production systems where they can, produce day neutrals all, from May to October, or, I'm sure we've all seen greenhouse strawberries in the grocery store. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there to provide local food to to customers, for a longer season. And then I guess to tie some of the opportunities to my previous comment about experiences, I think there's a lot of opportunity to collaborate with other businesses and provide some on-farm experiences that are a little bit beyond, pick your own, or, beyond that direct agriculture experience, whether that's yoga on the farm, or, a little Christmas market on the farm, or concerts. I think that was mentioned, and on-farm festivals. So I think those are some other opportunities that I think people are kind of getting into lately.
So,
And I thought, go ahead, Amy.
No, I was
No,
just
go
going to
ahead.
say, I completely agree with the experiences things. That was one of the things I had jotted down as well. But since we've already talked about that, I'll move on to kind of a different one, which is kind of leads to what Nicole was saying about kind of the cost and everything. But food prices are important to people, and sustainability is another thing that is important to sort of more and more consumers, and understanding what that means. And so I think there's a huge emerging opportunity for farmers to express that, to share that. What are you doing to be sustainable? What are options that you can provide? Do you always have to put out all your perfect fruit at the end of the farm stand, or talk about how there's grading systems and price them at different ranges? So it's that whole like imperfect produce, sort of opportunity. I think there's a huge opportunity at direct to consumer sales of providing that information and that education and that opportunity for everybody to create value out of all the products. We're doing a lot of research at looking at like unavoidable waste streams and how we can make value added in that. So I think there's a huge opportunity at even just looking at food waste, food loss, educating around, or not even educating, letting people know proper storage or best ways of maintaining the product, or even though they don't look as pretty, they're perfectly as nutritious and useful in soups or stews or canning or freezing or other things like that. And it goes along with those experiences, but it also brings that value proposition of why sometimes people are hesitant to go to farm, sort of those farm markets or direct to farm sales.
Yeah, removing one of those barriers that talked about earlier. I think it's a U.S. Potato farm, and their whole thing is about having massive days to to sell potatoes that are not perfect I think their potato hot yay or something is their handle. The other thing that goes a little bit off of what Nicole talked about is what I found in some of my volunteer work when I'm doing education to grade 3 students. The newcomer students who have been in Canada for maybe less than a year, they have a closer tie to agriculture than people who have grown up in Ontario, because their parents had ties to agriculture, or their grandparents had tied to agriculture. So it's really neat when you ask the class, has anybody been on a farm, and they put up their hand, and you ask, they've never been on a farm in Canada, but they've been on farms. So it's like really neat to see where those opportunities might lie, because it's changing a lot. I think those were some really neat opportunities that all of you have shared, and some of them I wasn't expecting them. So that's amazing. So when we talk about some of the opportunities, those of us who have been around for a while immediately go to the barriers that exist, or those hurdles that exist, because there are some. So what is a hurdle that a farmer might expect to face when selling directly to consumers? And is there any piece of advice you can provide that would help overcome this hurdle? So those sort of the two parts to that question. Um, uh,
I'm
Go
happy to
ahead,
jump
Amy.
in
Yeah.
there. So I think the first thing is that is consistency. Well, consistency and supply, and they sort of go together. And being realistic in what you can offer, when, and for how long, because that's one of the issues I saw in the chat. A lot of people talking about how to get your sales into grocery stores, and that's what retailers are looking for. They have to create their plan for the year of how they're going to kind of fill their shelves. And so you have to be able to say that you can provide a consistent supply and understand what those volumes are going to be consistently. So I think that's some of the challenges, because somebody comes out to your business, and one weekend you have all this beautiful stuff that they love, and the next week they come out and you've got completely different things, but they were looking for what you found last weekend. Create some of this like, oh, well, I'm just going to go to the grocery store because I can always find what I'm looking for. So I think those are some of the kind of challenges that we've heard from people when they're sort of getting into this is how to connect with the consumers to be able to sort of let them know what's available, when it's available, and then also how to scale up at the right rate to be able to sort of get into those bigger markets if that is the ultimate goal of it. And I think, Nicole was mentioning social media. I think there's a lot of great opportunities there where farmers can use that to address that challenge or that hurdle by just being kind of genuine themselves, just saying, hey, this is what we've got this weekend. And so people that are coming and following, having their social media, information around the store so people can quickly start following them if that's a place that they want to go, so that you're building these experiences into sort of repeat customers.
Wonderful.
I'm happy to jump in, but if you want to
Yeah,
go
go
first.
ahead, Nicole.
Okay.
Go ahead, Nicole.
I think for me, consistency, what Amy said is true, but that's also consistency in your branding and messaging. So that's like a completely separate thing. When I was preparing for this, one of the hurdles I really see when when working with businesses is just resource management. So again, if you're going to be consistent, you have to think, what can we viably do consistently? There are a gazillion ways to connect with people. So you have to step back and say, ultimately, what's the goal for our business? All of your marketing should support your business goals. You're not doing things just to grow an Instagram community for vanity. You're doing it to support your business. So think about, what are your business goals? Then take that down to marketing. How can we use our marketing to support those business goals? And then by understanding who your core market is and what your new opportunities can be, you can decide what social media platforms do we need to be on, because that's where our customer base is. Most people are on social media 24/7, to be honest, but you have to decide maybe one or two platforms you're going to really engage in regularly and consistently, because that's really where your market is. So you have to have an understanding of that. A lot of people in my line of work say, oh, Facebook is dead, no one's on Facebook. There's still a lot of people on Facebook if that's your market. So you have to have a good understanding of who you want to speak to and where they are, so you can manage your resources appropriately.
Very good. And Erica?
Yeah, I think this kind of ties into Nicole's comments. So instead of having one or two wholesale customers, I think now you're going to have hundreds and hopefully thousands of customers. So, and that's a lot of individual interactions. And so that means that hopefully you have somebody on your team who's interested and thrives off of those kinds of connections and meeting customers and forming those connections with them. So I think that's maybe, something to be aware of, is that you have to have a lot of, you have to have a people person or someone who's interested in taking on that role. And then when you're talking about marketing and social media, it's making sure that you're incorporating and like accounting for how much time that takes and focus, and valuing your time for that. Whether that's building a website, building social media, or spending time at a farmer's market talking to your customers. That all takes time and effort, which is valuable. And it's hard to do like off the side of your desk, and especially when there's expectations. Maybe Nicole has more experience with this, but like how quickly do your customers want you to respond to on social media, and how often are they expecting you to respond? So I think that's just, with direct marketing, there's a lot more of those, individual interactions. So I think that's one of the main hurdles that comes to mind when I think about shifting to direct marketing.
Yeah, I think all of your points were really, they're great. They're very bang on for what I see. I mean, this isn't the area I work in specifically, but I've seen lots of businesses over the years start, and there's so many things they have to think about and have to deal with, the moving from a few customers to thousands, the understanding who you're trying to reach out to, and all those pieces. I think a hurdle that none of you mentioned, but it was talked about a little bit when Tara spoke, was often, depending if you're not doing primary agriculture on your farm. So if you're doing ag-related or on-farm diversified uses, you really need to understand from a municipal perspective of what the rules are within your community, and like make that conversation with your municipality early, so that you're not already operating and then you find that you're doing something that is not permitted with your land. It's a lot easier to have those conversations before you do those sorts of things.
Sorry, Carolyn, I would just add to that is that those can be different municipality to municipality, and they often are. I think that'd be a heads up, is that if your neighbor is doing something that you're interested in, just make sure that, you have the same regulations to follow.
Yeah, exactly. It is. It's very municipal specific. So starting locally is really important. So our next question, and there's some good chat going on chat around social media in the chat. So we'll maybe give a heads up. We'll try to tackle that after this next question is have a little bit of time to talk about the topics that are being asked within the chat.
Yeah, I see a lot of it. I'm like, that takes
Yeah.
like a couple hours.
Yeah. Well, the
Yeah.
other thing I was going to say with hurdles is remember what Tara said is like, partner. So like every community has a small business enterprise center and they offer workshops on social media and what the different channels can do for you. Like this is all offered free through your small business enterprise center or whatever it happens to be called. So, don't be afraid to use the resources that exist, even if they aren't specific to agriculture, because it's
100%. Yeah.
there's so much out there to support these sorts of pieces as well. Okay, so going back to our next question, what and there was a bit in the chat about that earlier is what suggestions do you have for farmers who want to sell directly to consumers but aren't sure which sales channel they want to use? So, and we've heard a few of those sales. Nicole, do you want to start with that one?
I mean, there's a couple of different ways to address this. It could be like, where are you actually physically going to sell your product? Is it online, direct? Is it direct physically at a farmer's market or from your own farm? Is it through a distributor? Is it through that's a whole other thing. But I guess that's, from my point of view as a communicator, I'll probably maybe leave that to, Erica, maybe to talk about what channel. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. I think my expertise on the panel is more about communications. In terms of sales channel, like there are so many ways on social media now that you can sell direct. Even like Meta has like catalogs that you can set up that would connect to your online sales. So again, like if you're doing direct sales, it would be sort of figuring out how can you reduce the barriers in that digital communication piece. So a lot of the time is it completely 100% mobile friendly? Because at least 50% of people are doing everything on their phone. How many times do you have to click before you get to where you want people to be? If you're setting up a landing page for something, like have all of your ads go directly to the landing page for the thing that you're promoting. Don't make people go look for the information. They'll go away. They won't bother. Yeah.
And is it fair to say that if I'm selling to Whole Foods or I'm selling my product on TikTok, the messaging is different?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
So
your customer
messaging
at
is
Whole
different
Foods,
comparing to your channel. Yeah.
I think it's what Amy said at the very beginning. Look at the value chain. Who is your customer? Is your customer the grocery store buyer, or is your customer, the mom of three? You have to understand too what drives those consumers. Like Erica said, most people nowadays are not buying fresh food in volume from the farm for a discount. They're going for the experience. I've worked with some farmers. They do strawberry picking and pumpkin picking and that kind of thing. And a lot of these people are finding they've had to change their pricing structure because no one's even buying anything. They're not even picking strawberries. They're just going to take pictures to post.
You have to have an entrance fee, right?
Well, so you have to it's understand what's your business model, what's the value that you offer, and then how do you make that viable? How do you communicate that consistently? How do you offer it consistently?
Amy, have you done research and for farmers for looking at channels and how to?
Yeah, I think you have to first, obviously everything sort of Nicole's talking about is good, but you also have to look at the product that you're trying to sell. What's its shelf life? Can you just sell it is it an apple you can pick off the tree and someone can take away with it? Or is it something that has to be kind of processed or finished or something along those lines? What is the setup of your farm? Is it conducive to having people coming in? Or are you better to set up sort of online channels where you're delivering kits or people are coming to pick things up on a Saturday morning? Do you have regulatory or biosecurity issues that might prevent, people from wandering around your farm or sort of checking sort of what's going on? So those are all considerations too that kind of need to go into this sort of business plan that you have to really create of how you're going to sort of tackle this moving forward. You also
Yeah.
have to think of, what do you want to do long term? Like, do you want to have a shop that people are coming in, that you have to staff, that you have to stock? Or do you want an online store? Well, if you want an online store, you can't use stock pictures. You have to constantly be taking pictures of your own product, because that's one thing we've seen through a lot of consumer research. What consumers hate about, horticultural sites is when someone takes a stock picture of a flower or an apple. They want to see your flowers, your apples, sort of type of thing. So these are all like really important decisions of kind of, what's that long-term vision of what you want to be? Is it something you want to manage yourself with your existing staff? Then what am I capable of doing? Or is it something that you want to grow, that you're going to be hiring, bringing people in to do, the social media, the website, the communications, to man the store and to kind of grow, sort of like as it builds. So those are all like big considerations. And also, you have to be genuine to yourself. That's part of selling that experience, which is really what it all comes down to. Whether you're trying to sell it to, a grocery store, or you're trying to sell it to, a consumer, or you're trying to sell it to your next door neighbor's big farm market because you've got a product that you think could, complement what they're already sort of doing or selling. So I think there's like, there's a lot of things to kind of sit down, and it's really important to sort of put a plan together of what all of these things are. But I think the key things that you have to look at is like to be transparent about what you're trying to do and who you're trying to do it for. Understanding kind of who the segments out there, you're not like, just like you were showing, Carolyn, you're not going to reach everybody. There's not everybody wants the same thing. So you need to kind of understand, this is who I'm trying to reach, and be happy with that. Even if that's only 25% of, of the population, you have to kind of set those targets. And then you also have to bring convenience into it for yourself and also for the people that you're trying to sell to, because they're not going to work with you if it's difficult. They're not going to come back like if it's difficult. And you need to build a connection. So how are you going to build that connection that's going to be genuine to yourself? So like, I know for myself, and this is something that comes up, I don't like posting on social media every day. So that would be a terrible business model for myself. So you have to think about that too, right?
Well,
Like,
unless you had someone on your team who could do it. So when you look at your
exactly, but
resource,
that's what
yeah,
yeah, exactly.
100%.
So
But
those are
it's
the
not for
things
everybody.
you
Yeah, it's
have
not
to
for
sort of
everyone.
think about, right? Like, am I that personality that wants to have this? Do I like talking to people all day, every day, and explaining what I do 100 different times? If no, maybe, you need to look at more kind of, sort of different channels. So I think those are some important considerations that are useful, like kind of as you go through it. And then the final thing I'd say is talk to people that are doing things similar to what you think you want to do, and ask them about what works, what doesn't work, because it's part of a community too, right? Farming is always about community. And so learn from your neighbors, learn from your um people that are already doing it, even if it's reaching out blindly saying, I love your farm market, how did you get started? Like those are great ways of kind of building that as well.
Well, and going back again to what Tara said, those opportunities for networking that Vermont is creating is allowing people to do that in that safe space, right? Erica,
Yeah.
you work with farmers every day. Is there, when you talk, do you talk about market channel opportunities and sort of how they what considerations they should think about?
Yeah, I guess the first thing that came to my mind, and Amy and Nicole touched on this, is your location, right? Like, do you want to go to your customers or do you want them to come to you? And I like Amy's point of what's your long-term goal, because that could look very different your first year to what it hopefully maybe in 15 years. So I think that affects, labor, right? Like, do you have people nearby? Like, do you live close to enough people where you could get high school students to help staff your farmers markets or help staff your pick your own fields, or what are your labor needs? And like, does that affect your channel? So could you do that on the farm or go to your customers? And then, how are your customers getting to you? Do you have accessible roads, or is it down a lot of farm lanes? And is that a factor that, in the long term won't be easy for customers, like large volumes of customers, to get there? And then also the layout of your farm, which I think Amy mentioned as well. So, is that conducive to attracting customers, right? Like, if you're doing pick your own apples, is the orchard at the front of the farm where people can see it driving by, and is that going to attract your customers? And, some of that can be designed if you're going to go into inviting customers onto your farm, but some of that is easier if it's like already feasible to have customers on your farm. Like, do you have lanes that are accessible for any kind of vehicle, or are you going to take wagons to get them to the different parts of the farm? And I think something to never underestimate is parking. Like, I think, sometimes you can dedicate a large portion of your farm to parking, and I think it's can be more complicated than we think. what is your parking lot? How big is it? What's the flow of traffic? And then also, what's it look like if it's raining and muddy? And because if it's going to be on an old field, that's a lot more difficult than a place that's dedicated to parking. So those are some of the factors that might determine if it's going to be, a pick your own or bring people to a farmer's market or an on-farm market or a farm stand. So I think those are some of the factors that I would think of.
If I can just jump in one thing too. I think we've all would agree this is like a no-brainer, but the most important thing from my point of view is it profitable? Is it actually viable to do? So do you have enough supply to pay for the cost of running that way of doing business? That's obviously critical. It won't be long term if you're losing money hand over fist.
Yeah, for sure. And there's so many factors to consider, when you think about costing and pricing when you're selling directly versus
if you're even doing direct, it's like the postage, the time to package it, the time to how are you going to arrange for the logistics of it? It's
lots of pieces to think about there. And so one of our next question is around the key first steps for farmers who be beginning to planning direct to consumer sales. And if there's any resources that you think would be helpful. And I think we may be able to tie in some of this. Nicole, you might be able to tie into some of the social media and stuff that's been going on in the chat, as well as some of the other things. So are there, what is that key first steps farmers should be thinking about if they're selling direct to consumers? And then what resources do you think would be helpful for them? And I'll start with you, Erica, this time, if that's okay.
Yeah. So I think the first step is to talk to other farmers or go visit other farms that you're interested in their business model. So, either meeting, other producers that are producing the same kind of product that you're interested in, or the same kind of agritourism venture that you're interested in, and maybe talking to them and just visiting their farms and seeing how they run it. And then I think there's a lot of great resources out there that that people who are interested can check out. So Farm Fresh Ontario was mentioned, which is an excellent organization that represents and supports direct farm marketing organizations, and they do tours and networking events. So I think that would be a great resource to check out. And then going to other industry events or conventions. So specifically, there's the Ontario Fruit and Vegetable Convention in February in Niagara Falls, and there's a lot of different sessions. Some of them are geared towards direct marketing, specifically, from Farm Fresh Ontario or the Ontario or Farmers Markets Ontario. So I think that would be a great first step if anyone's interested in, meeting some other folks and hearing from speakers.
Very good. Amy?
Well, I said it sort of before, but I think the big thing is, you've got to create a plan. You can't just say, this year we're going to start selling things. So you've got to sort of put a plan in motion of what it's going to look like, how you plan to scale up, what you plan to offer, where you're going to do it. Who is your customer? That's always the question I ask anybody that I'm talking to. Who do you see your customer being? And then how do you reach that customer and make it, easy and convenient sort of for them? So kind of laying those things out early, then I would say, obviously, sort of talking to people, sort of looking into it, planning it to scale up. Don't start big, start small to see what you can actually do, and then kind of sort of be able to sort of grow it from there. In terms of, sort of resources, there's a lot out there. Erica mentioned some great ones. Some have been mentioned on the call. The other things that I would mention is that there's some food and beverage, like there's Food and Beverage Ontario, there's the Canadian Food Innovation Network. They both offer, funding and programs and support for producers. If you're looking to make value add, a lot of the colleges in Ontario have food innovation centers, and so they'll work with you to take your produce and make it into a jam or a chutney or whatever it is that you're sort of a beverage sort of looking to make, and they often have some funding opportunities that are able to do that. There's things like Farm Market Ontario, if you're thinking farmer markets, like farm markets are something that you're sort of looking to get into. There's also a lot of government programs, such as like FedDev and IRAP that provide funding to growers. Also, financial institutions, it's actually really surprising how a lot of the banks have ag sectors or ag support, ag financial advisors.
Yeah, I don't know why I just put it in a small bottle either.
support you in terms of, sort of some of these funding opportunities or programs that you could sort of tap into or opportunities that sort of come out. Same with Agricultural Adaptation Council. So there's all sorts of places. I know it's a lot of work to go sort of find these, but that's where if you connect in with, say, your industry association that represents your commodity, or tapping in with, people like Erica, like at OMAFA, other, industry associations, your local business bureaus, all of these can help you develop that network to create those connections. I think that's part of it too. You're never going to be able to do this alone. So you have to figure out, like, who's the army that's going to be supporting you, and sort of how to build those connections to be successful.
Yeah, wow, a lot of great information there. And I think over the 9 weeks, I'm guessing that, that this is being delivered. A lot of those contacts and resources will be shared as well as for folks to be able to learn more about them. And Nicole.
Yes. I guess a lot of things have been said, but for me, the big thing is don't make assumptions. So do some research about what others value. So as Amy said, who is your customer and what do they value? Typically, I say this to myself every single day with the work that we do, and it's who am I speaking to and why do they care? I think it's always you always have to remember that what you're selling isn't necessarily what others will value. You have to understand sort of the emotional connection there. So a lot of the time it's if you're preparing like dinners or whatever, like it's not just about, hey, here's a carrot. It's like, well, why is that carrot providing value to that family or that person? And so it's understanding always who your core audience would be, your viable core audience, and trying to target them first. And as Amy said too, I always agree, start small and then scale up. Don't try to do too much because you're inevitably going to fail or be ripping your hair out. You won't be sleeping at night. So think about, what is it you're trying to do to support the business? What resources do you have in-house and externally that you can take advantage of? Another one that does a lot of support. I haven't worked with them directly, so I don't know, but I see a lot of their work. Is Digital Main Street. I think it's a government-funded program. They help physical businesses do direct sales online, and I think they have a lot of different things too. But there's a lot of work you can do in terms of secondary research from your home. So like ChatGPT is actually a pretty powerful tool. I don't know if a lot of people have used it. We use it every day now. It's a good base. Definitely, you can't just take it for granted that it's all right. It's all correct for you, but you can use it, develop prompts. There's things on YouTube and Instagram, all sorts of things about how do you use ChatGPT as well. But ChatGPT can be a really good place to start to help, you'd say like act as a social media manager. And this is my type of business. What recommendations would you make for like a 1-year goal or create a marketing plan? It will do it for you. And again, you have to use your own initiative to refine it to be appropriate for your business, but it can be a good starting point. Anyway, I would say you have to, again, it's what we've come back to. Start small, realize who you're speaking to, what they value, and then what you authentically can offer consistently with the resources that you have. That for me is the big one, really, because that will guide you into what direction you take in terms of social media, how often you post, how your product will be packaged, what your website looks like. In terms of branding, you don't ever want bad surprises. You don't want a surprise. You want everyone to be like, oh, that's what I expected and that's what I got. If it's a surprise, it's a good surprise. You never want someone to be like, oh, I didn't think that's not what I expected, because that's where you get barriers. People won't come back.
Yeah, it's I partnered with the Halton region earlier this week and last month, and we delivered something called Selling Food to Ontario. And we had a number of speakers. It's essentially similar to this, only a lot of them they were food processors, not necessarily farmers that were looking to scale up and sell different ways. And we had a speaker yesterday or Tuesday, whatever day of this week, on artificial intelligence and how you can use it. And they were using it to make products better. So they were talking about, this is my product, these are the barriers that we've found. How would I make it better? And Chat GPT was helping them solve challenges with existing food products to make them better. It was fascinating how
it's
being
evolving
used
very
right now.
quickly. It's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
unbelievable. And the other thing, actually, just if I can say, because I see it all the time and it really hurts my heart, anybody who's a small business, get some quotes from a variety of people before you pick one. The amount of times we've helped people who come to us and like, oh, we spent, thousands of dollars on this website and it's absolute rubbish. Like, like really do some quotes. Don't just get like, oh, a friend of mine said they could do it for me and it's going to be great. Get some quotes and make sure you do due diligence to work with the right partners.
Yeah, because it's
for
all
sure.
part of the business, right? That's what you have to think of it as, right? It's
Mhm.
it's an add-on to your business, so you have to manage it that way. And then the other thing I would say, which I see time and time again, is that often your consumers are coming from a totally different perspective than you are. And so what you talk about and what you say and what it means to you might not translate at
Oh,
all
it's
in
always
terms of what it
different.
means
It's
to
totally
them.
different. So that's
Yeah,
what I'm saying. Do research. Who are you
yeah,
speaking to and what do they care about?
yeah.
It will be very different than what you think
Even
a lot
how
of the
you
time.
might use a word might be like, I think organic and local are two great words of how industry uses them versus people that are sort of in more urban settings use them, and how the definitions don't like coincide at all. So it's important to kind of, define and talk about it. And I always say, like, we need to, if people always talk about educating consumers, people don't like being told they need to be educated because they're very smart and potentially another discipline. So what we
Uh-huh.
need to do is we need to be transparent and we need to be open about the information and what we're communicating. And if people don't seem to be resonating with it, we need to work with them to understand how to better communicate it.
Mhm.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Nicole, there was a question much earlier in the chat around the trend away from social media. And do you want to just address that quickly before we wrap up?
I, I don't think it's a trend away from it at all. I think there are definitely some people who are pushing back saying that it's not healthy for us. But if you just look around you, people are constantly on their phones. Like everywhere you go, people are walking around with their phone in their face. And people don't watch TV now. There's a thing, like I did research, and at least I think 60% of people watch TV with their phone. They're watching their TV and they're on their phone too. It's worse for younger people. It's worse for younger people than older people. And yeah, so that's not my experience in terms of research or personal, that people are moving away from social media. I think some people, I mean, I know I'd like to get away from social media some days. But I don't think that's the case. I think people are constantly on their phone, and most people will have one platform that they're on every single day for many hours. Most people have accounts in 2 to 3 platforms, but they have their favorite one that they're on the most. Um, YouTube is a huge one that a lot of people are not taking advantage of. It's used. We've just actually finished a study for a commodity group that we're working with, and YouTube is a very important one for where people get their information from for food. Like my kids that are, 20 and under, they use YouTube and also TikTok as a search engine as opposed to Google. So if they want recipes, they don't even go to Google at all. They just go to TikTok and look for the recipe.
That's fascinating. Well, I think we're out of time, so we didn't get
Mm-hmm.
through all the ones we were hoping, but I think a lot of wonderful insights were shared, a lot of information. And honestly, I can see why this is going to be a number, a bunch of weeks after this, because there's so many facets that need to be explored to understand. So I'll turn this back over to Danielle, I believe, is who's going on now. But I want to thank each of you for your insights and your information. And I think we all learned a lot here during this session. So thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Amy, Erica, Nicole, and Carolyn. That was a great discussion. Before we dive into a few resources and funding programs available to you on the line today, we'd love to hear how everybody enjoyed the workshop today. And if you wouldn't mind, my colleague Jessica is going to post in the chat. Please complete our very short follow-up survey from this workshop. It'll help inform the upcoming workshops. and it'll help us make them better. So thank you. And with that, I'm going to pass things over to Danielle to talk about some resources for all of you. Over to you, Danielle.
Great. Thank you so much, Krista. And thanks so much to our panel. Fantastic job. We just thought we'd round it out with a few resources that we think you might be interested in to learn more about. I know there were quite a few funding programs that were already discussed today. So if you're not familiar with your Community Futures Development Corporation, those are often a great resource for finding funding, and they often target rural areas, so they're a great spot for agricultural and food businesses. Your own economic development office, staff, as well as Carolyn mentioned, your local small business center. We often don't think about agriculture and food in the same space as, a small business center, because a lot of times they're seen as maybe helping more the downtowns and that type of thing. But it's actually a great resource. They have some excellent starter company workshops and resources that way. There's also commodity and agricultural organizations. So we've mentioned some like Farm Fresh Ontario. There's also Farmers Markets Ontario, and then several individual commodity organizations, like I see Ontario Hazelnuts on our call today, and many other commodity organizations represented that can do a great job at helping market your product. And then Farm Credit Canada, if you haven't looked into them at all, they have quite a few business resources. Of course, they do financing, but they also have several resources around business planning and trying to help you with your farm management. So there is an upcoming workshop in Stratford on January 22nd. They do a virtual business plan boot camp. And there's also just several resources online on their website that can help you. Then a few funding programs. We have Growing Future Opportunities Initiative. So this one, we do have the how subscribed it is. So it is quite subscribed at this point. Apples is closed. However, there's still some opportunities for wine grapes as well as tender fruit and table grapes to jump in on this funding program to help grower plant varieties help growers plant varieties of produce that will improve quality, production, and marketability. There's the Ontario Craft Cider Marketing Fund and Small Cidery Program. The current intake is closed, but this will help provincial craft cideries market their products to more consumers and stimulate growth across the sector. There's the Dairy Processing Modernization Initiative, which can help with equipment upgrades that make processing more efficient and or improve food safety. It is also in high demand, but it is only 90% subscribed. So if you are in the dairy processing space, you could be able to achieve funding for equipment, waste management, product handling, and other equipment improvements. There's also one on labor. We did hear quite a few folks talking about labor force challenges or ability to hire. So there's a funding program, Labor Force Management Strategies Initiative, and this will help with the attraction, recruitment, and or retention of employees. So there's a few different categories, one of which is your worker supports. So that is around regional transportation, translation, language training, or other specific training or mentorship, HR, policies and programs. So helping you get your HR in order, especially if you're a small farm business, that could be a great one to look into to help with HR policies if you only have one or two staff and don't have HR on payroll. On-site employee amenities, so other multi-faith spaces or recreational facilities for your employees. Okay, and it's 12 o'clock, perfect timing. So next steps, we once again appreciate our support from our commodity and partner organizations and everyone joining us on the call today. We have a busy few weeks coming up with many more workshops on these topics. So we'll be talking about value-added agriculture, food and beverage next Thursday at the same time. And then in December, we'll be jumping into selling at farmers markets and looking at restaurants and institutional procurement. So please join us and head to our website where you can register for the other 8 workshops. And with that, I will turn it back over to Krista.
Thank you, everybody. With that, that concludes our first workshop. So thank you for joining and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye now.